So we've done quite a lot of lottery simulator mock drafts, and I was thinking about doing another one before the lottery, but we've done enough. So in today's video, I want to look at some situations you might not realize are possible. So that's what we're talking about in today's video. So if you guys like my content, make sure you like and subscribe. Let's try to get 20 likes on today's video, and let's hop into it. The NBA Draft Lottery is one of the most exciting, mysterious, and controversial events in the NBA season every year. The controversy of the 1988 NBA Draft Lottery gets talked about to this day, mainly due to the amount of damning evidence against David Stern and the league. Sometimes it just feels like the outcome makes too much sense on the league's behalf. For example, it's just kind of weird that the two teams with the lowest evaluation in the league at the time of the lottery last year jumped to the first and second overall pick, that being the Memphis Grizzlies and the New Orleans Pelicans. Throughout NBA history, we've also seen a ton of teams take massive jumps in the lottery. The Blazers went up and got Greg Oden with just a 5.3% chance. When the Chicago Bulls drafted their hometown phenom Derrick Rose, they had just a 1.7% chance at the number one pick. Just a little fishy if you ask me. The Clippers get Blake Griffin in 2011 with a 2.8% chance. The Cavaliers get the number one pick in 2011 with a 2.8% chance. Then again in 2014 with a 1.7% chance. These are just some of the crazy recent ones, so I hope you're getting the idea that what we're going to talk about has happened with almost a questionable frequency. So in case we didn't make it clear, we're going to look at the possibilities of some of these teams at the bottom of the lottery jumping up. So as you probably know, maybe you forgot, since last season, the draft lottery odds have changed in the effort to avoid tanking as much as possible. Now it's much more likely that teams at the bottom can actually jump up. So I assume you probably know, especially if you've been watching my content, who holds the top odds at the number one pick. It's teams like the Golden State Warriors, Cleveland Cavaliers, and Minnesota Timberwolves. But today, as we said, we're going to focus on those teams at the bottom. I thought about talking about these Suns, but we literally just did a whole video on their future. So we're going to do all the teams without top 10 odds. We're starting it off with the San Antonio Spurs, who have been in a pretty weird situation since the end of the Kawhi Leonard era. They've been okay with veterans like DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge, both of which have a dying skill set, but not nearly good enough to make a real run at a title. It's inevitable that a big rebuild is coming for them, and it just might be jump-started on Thursday night with a little bit of luck. As we talked about, the odds have changed, but I don't think most of the NBA community realizes just how crazy this could get. For example, if this was 2 years ago and the Spurs were that same 11th spot, they would have just around a 3% chance at a top 4 selection. Now, that's a 9.4% chance. In 2018, they would have just a 0.8% chance at the number 1 overall selection. Now, that's a 2% chance, which definitely doesn't mean it's extremely likely, but considering the amount of jumps we saw with the old odds, it's more than possible. Now, out of all the teams that could jump up, I really hope it's not the Spurs, just because, well, I'm not sure I've enjoyed a Spurs game in quite a while, but that's not going to stop me from looking at these possibilities. Let's start it off by looking at the hypothetical that they land the number 1 overall selection. What's so interesting about the possibility of them bringing in a high-level rookie right now is the fact that this team might have a lot more top picks coming their way. Currently, they only have 4 players under contract for the 2021 season, that being DeJounte Murray, Lonnie Walker, and their 2 rookies, Keldon Johnson and Luka Samanic. This is also assuming that the Spurs pick up the team options on Walker, Johnson, and Samanic. I don't see a reason for them to go crazy in free agency over the next couple years, so based on what we know right now, it's pretty fair to assume this team is going to be, well, terrible. So knowing this, I think it would be absolutely foolish to draft anything but upside. At the number 1 spot, I would really question a selection like Onyeka Okongwu. Not that he isn't a great prospect, there's just guys with so much more upside in this draft. I also think, given this team has such a long way to title contention, and this is a pretty weak draft overall, that trading this pick would really make a lot of sense. I really think there's one right pick for them here, and that's Lamelo Ball. Not that he's the best fit, but solely due to the fact that he has the biggest ceiling in this draft. And if you question that, I really don't know what game you're watching. The best young player on their roster is clearly DeJounte Murray, who plays the same possession, but as I said, they shouldn't be drafting for anything but upside. With the direction the league is going, I also don't think it would be the end of the world trying to build a lineup around a 6'8" and 6'5" point guard. Now, it's much more likely that they actually just land a top 4 selection, And that's where it gets a little bit more confusing. If they've got a shot at Edwards or Lamelo, you think about making a pick. If not, I firmly believe trading is the best decision if they are able to get the proper value. But it's a San Antonio Spurs, so I wouldn't be surprised if they just made a decision that's going to help them in the moment. Just behind the San Antonio Spurs with the 12th best odds in the lottery, we've got the Sacramento Kings. This is another team in a weird spot. Last season, they showed so much promise after coming in with extremely low expectations. It really looked like they had their future backcourt with Buddy Hield and De'Aaron Fox. Plus, they just added the second overall pick in the draft, Marvin Bagley. Now, the conversation surrounding this team would be a lot different right now if they just took the guy that went number 3, but obviously that didn't happen. After that promising year, things have gone downhill. We didn't see much individual progress. They've dealt with a lot of injuries, and now they've got to deal with this Buddy Hield situation, which makes their future and future roster very hard to predict. Jumping up in the lottery could make a lot of these concerns be temporarily wiped away. Going in, they've got a 6.2% chance at a top 4 selection and a 1.3% chance at that number 1 pick. If they stay where they are right now, I don't think there's really any selections that suddenly change the outlook of their future. But if the luck is on their side Thursday night, I think there's definitely some spots where we will look at this team a lot differently. At number 1, the decision is obvious. They end the Buddy Hield era and take Anthony Edwards. At this point, it's really hard to imagine Hield sticking on this roster for too long, so they move on and try to trade him during the offseason. A backcourt of Fox and Edwards would really have a case for the most athletic backcourt in the whole entire league. I'm a big believer in Edwards, as I really do believe he's going to be a much better shooter than I think most are expecting. I still don't think this team would have a top young core, as I'm not a believer in Bagley at this point, but I can guarantee this team would be fun to watch. If they jump into the top 4, they could go a lot of directions, but would expect a selection like one of the top big men, James Wiseman, or Onyeka Okongwu, or a wing like Danny Avdija. Just like the Spurs, if a team is going to jump up, I really hope it's one of the other 3 teams with the 5 worst odds. This is where it starts to get fun. Next up, we've got the New Orleans Pelicans, who have a 5.7% chance at a top 4 pick and a 1.2% chance at that number 1 pick in this draft. Man, oh man, just freaking imagine if the Pelicans get the number 1 pick in back-to-back years. I really hope if this were to happen, they take the player that everyone would want them to take, Lamelo Ball. Pairing up 2 of the 3 Ball brothers, and they would now have arguably the 3 most hyped up prospects in recent memory. That being Lonzo, Lamelo, and Zion Williamson. It's clearly not a match made in heaven. Lonzo and Lamelo are both clearly ball-dominant players, but there are some things going in their favor. First off, they've played together their whole entire lives. Plus, Lonzo has played this season alongside Drew Holiday, so I think there's a chance it might work. We've seen some teams have success with 2 point guard systems recently, such as the Houston Rockets with Chris Paul and James Harden, who had played the point guard position the previous season before Paul's arrival. Now, it's hard to do right, considering willingness as off-ball players, spacing, minute stacks, but I think we're going to see a lot more roster construction similar to the Rockets as time goes on. Now, let me make it clear, this selection is just fun to think about. The right decision at number 1 really might be Anthony Edwards. On paper, it would look really good going into the future to have Lonzo Ball, Anthony Edwards, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and Jackson Hayes. Now, that lineup doesn't offer much spacing, but that doesn't have to be the exact lineup we would see. The NBA tried their hardest to give Zion a chance at the playoffs, so I really wouldn't be too surprised if some fishy stuff happens with the lottery. But you know, they can't make it too obvious, so let's look at some possibilities that they're inside the top 4. I think they would be in a pretty similar situation to the Spurs in the fact that at the top of the draft, it would be Edwards, LaMelo, or trade the pick. But as I hinted at, I'm not sure how many teams are really going to be trying to trade up in this draft, but we've already heard Drew Holiday trade rumors. You give them an asset like a top 4 pick, and their possibilities get extremely exciting. Finally, we've got another interesting one, and there's actually going to be 2 teams watching where this pick goes very closely. Right now, the Memphis Grizzlies have the 14th best odds, but their selection is actually in the hands of the Boston Celtics unless their pick lands within the top 6. This pick has just a 2.4% chance at landing in the top 4 and a 0.5% chance at becoming the number 1 pick. Now, the chance at top 4 odds are kind of deceiving, as if the pick's gonna land inside the top 4, there's actually practically identical odds that it's either the number 1 or number 4 pick. Now, it also should be noted, and I've sadly got this wrong in the past, that the only lottery pick the Celtics can have is 14. The way the lottery works, the pick can either be 14 or top 4. There's no pick in between that either team can have. So the only hypothetical we are dealing with is that the Grizzlies land a top 4 selection, and man, would be exciting. I'm very high, as I've made it clear through my content, in the young duo of Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. Adding a top 4 pick to a small market like Memphis could be a game changer for their future, as this team might be a playoff team from here on out. I really think it would be hard for them to mess up this selection. I don't see why they would draft Lamelo, but honestly, I wouldn't really knock it. But the other guys pretty much all make sense. Edwards, that's a seamless fit. A guy like Onyeka would be scary considering who we'd be pairing up with in the front court. Denny Avdija would probably address their biggest hole. Regardless, I think this would be hard to mess up. This could get crazy, which is why I wanted to make the video before everything goes down. To get an idea of just how likely something crazy going down in the draft lottery, go to the website Tankathon and do a bunch of lottery simulations. I think you'd be very surprised just how many teams land that number 1 pick. But that's the end video, guys. You guys tell me your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked the video, make sure you like and subscribe. And the shoutouts are gonna be Julian, Garrett, Blue, Roy, and Ben. If you guys want to shout out in the next video, all you gotta do is like the video and comment liked or rep notification squad, and I'll shout 5 of you guys out. With all that being said, hope you guys have a great day, and peace.